yet another episode of Fox Trick. I am your host, Matt Brady. Joining me, as always, is Thomas the Motos Davis and Alan Thomas once again. Today's topic is we're going to spotlight some more RPGs. This time it isn't necessarily JRPGs, although I'm pretty sure that's what we've all picked today. And we're going to have two RPGs today and just kind of talk a little bit more about them and just kind of hopefully spotlight them for people who maybe haven't played these games or whatever. And we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. And Alan, you are going first.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to get something a little more recent. Pretty much everything we've talked about has been older stuff. So I looked at my collection. I decided it's a classic series, but it's the next to newest, well, third to newest incarnation of it, Tales of Graces. Now in the U.S. it has an F on the end of it, and not just one of those weird naming things that happened when it got ported here. Originally released on the Wii, and then ported here in 2012 at the PS3 version. You would think maybe like there's some weird stuff about that. It's a perfect port. You don't notice anything control-wise or graphic-wise. It's cel-shaded. The animation is really crisp. And the music, like we talked about in a lot of our games, is also just on point. There's so many different sceneries, different action scenes, different characters. And the unique thing to this Tales series is, like other JRPGs, when you get into a battle, you transfer to a different screen and the battle happens in, like an arena. It's not turn-based, though. It's action. So you control your character, and depending on the character, you control whether they're more mana magic based or melee based. Melee based characters use a lot of combos, and you have 2 different types of attacks and 4 different ways you can make attacks with that type. So you can chain up to 8 different moves together to kind of bounce the enemy or to stymie them so that you can keep attacking longer, and your allies' magic can hit them and stuff like that. So the other unique part of that is it's multiplayer. So you have 3 characters in the battle, and those characters can be controlled by your friends right there with you.
Yeah. Was this the first one to do the multiplayer? Because I know Xillia has multiplayer, but I don't believe like Symphonia does. Because that's like the only one in the Tales series I've played is Symphonia.
I'm fairly certain that Vesperia on 360 had it as well.
Had multiplayer.
And there was another one, Tales of the Abyss, and I think that was on
PS2 and 3DS. I believe it got a 3DS.
Yeah, I rented it on 3DS for a while. Yeah, absolutely. So these games are all over the place, but despite how many of them there are and how quality some of them are, they're not even really like a shadow of how many people know of Final Fantasy.
Oh yeah, the Tales series is huge. There's a lot of games across. I think it started on the Game Boy Advance.
I think it was I think there's a Super Nintendo one.
Oh yeah, you're right. There is. Mostly. More recent. Tales of Fantasia for the. It was originally on the Super Famicom, the Japanese SNES, and we got the Game Boy Advance version of it. Yeah, I knew it was on there. Yeah, it is kind of weird. Like the Tales series doesn't have as much recognition as, say, the Final Fantasy series, when there's just as many games and they're all big.
At least not in the West.
Yeah, not in the West. Yeah.
In the East, they were literally based off of a series of light novels in the East.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like several of the first games were actually based off of actual books.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've played. The only one I've played in the series, sadly, is Symphonia. I'm still working on that, but because I bought
that one just got a port to PS3 pretty recently.
That's the one I got. Yeah, but I had played it on the GameCube, and sadly, I don't still own that copy because it's quite valuable these days. If you have the actual GameCube Tales of Symphonia, because it was really Symphonia was the only RPG on the GameCube. There weren't that many. There weren't that many of real RPGs on the GameCube. There was 5.
I don't believe that, but you're right that there weren't that many. But there were definitely more than 5.
Okay, there was Tales of Symphonia,
Uh-huh.
There was Fire Emblem, at least in the West. There was the Skies of Arcadia port. There was Paper Mario Thousand Year Door.
Yep. Both Bait and Kratos games.
Yeah, Bait and Kratos games. There was like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
And there was... I want to say there was a couple older ones ported to the GameCube as well.
Yeah. So, I mean...
There's also Phantasy Star Online, if you count those.
Yeah.
Those would be more action RPGs, though.
But, so I mean, like... That's about it. There really weren't, and like, I think most people, like, if you look at most like top 10 lists and stuff on that, like Symphonia is considered like the top, like the pinnacle RPG on the GameCube.
Yeah, it was pretty light. But now we've got. I'm glad that problem isn't as abundant anymore.
Oh no, Zillia and Zillia 2 were pretty big. Like Zillia 2 is got like pretty good reviews. And like everyone who I've talked to who's played Zillia says like it's so good.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through that one. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I want to play Vesperia for the 360. I don't know.
Vesperia is really good.
Yeah, it has like an anime too, or like it's like a movie or.
It has a lot of anime cutscenes.
Yeah.
I don't know about a full like movie though.
Yeah.
And that's been true of the series since it's been on PlayStation 2. Really, you've gotten anime cutscenes that are they're really well done. They don't look cheesy like some of the Final Fantasy ones because they're really done in a specific style.
Yeah, they're done in that very anime style. Because like when I started playing Symphonia and I turned on the opening cutscene, I was like, man, oh man, they must have added this like in the game, because I was like, oh, they probably didn't have this on the GameCube. So I went back and looked, and it was on the GameCube. I was like, oh, that's sweet, like. Anytime they have like good like anime cutscenes, and I mean all of the games are like they're like very similar in style, like they all kind of follow that like cell shaded, kind of art style, and it works like really well. Well, I guess Zillia is kind of it's a slight departure. It's still in that style, but
they stepped up the quality, but it is still in that style. Zillia's. I mean, Tales of Graces wasn't originally meant for PS3, right? So it was Wii. So they did a pretty good job, but Zillia looks just a lot better.
Yeah, the Japanese, it was only on Wii in Japan. It was not in America. We just got the PS3 port.
But I mean, to sum it up, it's a very story driven. There's not a ton of side quests, but the story is really, really interesting. There's lots of characters that are really rich to the story. The villain is great, and it's again the same villain throughout. So you've built up this rivalry with them, and it's someone who's an important character early in the game. It's all the way throughout. You get to know that character before he becomes the villain, and then circumstances.
Yeah. So is this a standalone? Because like some of the Tales games take place in like they have sequels.
This is a standalone. Yeah. As far as I don't know a lot about the world that Tales works in, but I think most of them take place in separate worlds, and this one does. It's sort of in a weird like the moon comes into play, and it's definitely set in its own.
Okay. Does it span 3 days?
Does it span 3 days?
No, it's a long story. Your characters grow up throughout the.
Hey man, those 3 days repeat over and over again, okay? until you save the moon and everything else.
Fair enough.
So.
Yeah, definitely check it out, and it's not expensive. It's been out for a few years. You probably get it for.
Yeah, I looked at it on Amazon, and the price right now is that kind of flat $20. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah. So okay, I guess moving on to me, one of the games I want to talk about is also a newer-ish RPG on both the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, but the PlayStation 3 version is definitely the definitive version to get, and that is Eternal Sonata. Eternal Sonata came out in about 2007. I think it originally came out on the 360, and then like a year later it came out on the PlayStation 3. It's kind of a very odd game in that the story is kind of like all over the place, but the story is about Frédéric Chopin, famous piano player, famous composer. And it's kind of like towards the end of his life, like the very end, he was on his deathbed, essentially. This is where this game is taking place, inside one of his dreams. And throughout the game, they have like so many references, not just to him, as he is also a playable character, somewhat sort of the main character, and I'll get to that in a second. But the game is like very about like music and like music theory. Like all of the characters' names have, you know, something to do with music. Like you have like a character named Polka and a character named Beat, and you know, so on and so on. And so the game, that's kind of its focus, is this music focus, but it also tackles like a lot of like political issues. Like it's kind of weird, and like there's like they have like they kind of tackle like pollution and just like corruption and all of these kinds of things like subtly, and I think like that's really cool. It's cell shaded. It's like a gorgeous game, and the soundtrack, as you would expect, you know, being that it is like of a classical composer, is also like a very, very well done soundtrack. The PS3 version is the more definitive version to get, simply because they added a lot of cutscenes that help explain the story. As like the 360 version and the original version, it's kind of hard. Like the story is kind of, it's almost like the writers, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, first of all, there's like three main characters. There's this character Allegretto, who you play as throughout like most of the game, and then you also play as like Frederick Chopin throughout the main part of the game, and they're all like together. And it's kind of like the writers couldn't really decide on like what direction they wanted the story to go, and so it's kind of all over the place. It's kind of actually difficult to really describe like what happens in the story. But the big thing about the game, and probably its coolest selling point, is it has a very, very unique combat system, in that, in a way, it's kind of similar to Grandia, and it's also kind of similar to Tales, in that you have that, like, so what happens is you're put into like a little 3D environment, and you can run around in that environment, but you have a timer, and running, like movement in battle, also like takes away your timer, so you have to really like strategize. And the game is not easy by any means. Like, it is like the battle system is like very complex, and you have to really think about like your strategy. And you can like run behind people and then cancel out their attacks by like hitting people from behind, and so on and so forth. But the big thing about the combat system is that there will be shadows in the game, and when monsters go in from the light or the dark, they will change. They'll become either stronger or weaker. Like, some are stronger in the dark, some are stronger in the light. And when you're in the light, you have a different moveset than you do when you're in the dark. So it adds just like another layer of strategy in like how you have to plan out what you want to do when you're attacking. So it's like this really interesting combat system, and it works really, really well, and it's really fun to be in the battles, and it's there's no other combat system like it. Like, I have not played any other game with a combat system like this one. And the game takes about, I don't know, it would probably take like 30 hours to beat, and it's also kind of like really linear. And that's kind of another downfall to the game. But it is definitely worth playing if you are looking for a game, especially on the 360, as there's not that many RPGs on the 360. So, Eternal Sonata. Have either of you guys played Eternal Sonata?
I actually have.
Oh, okay. Well, what did you think of it, Thomas?
Honestly, I enjoyed it, but it kind of felt like it wore on quite a bit. It was really slow plot-wise. Yeah,
the story's like all over the place.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems interesting at first what they're trying to put forth, but it just takes them forever to get to the point.
Right.
And it's not just absolutely gorgeous or super depressing like other RPGs on that system, such as Lost Odyssey.
Yeah.
But it definitely has its charms, and like you said, the battle system is unbelievably interesting.
Oh, it is. Like it's so it's so cool. Just because it's like it's just like the way you have to really strategize, because you get like a timer and it's like 16 seconds, and that includes like hitting people and like chaining combos. Then you can like stack your combos, and then you can just unleash these like super power attacks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Sorry.
Yeah. No. It's like it's worth checking. It's especially if you have a 360. Obviously, the PlayStation version is better. PlayStation 3 version is better. But
Yeah, it is.
for somebody who like doesn't have a PlayStation 3 and you just have a 360 and you're looking for RPGs, it's like one of 5 on the system. So it is like it's definitely worth playing. And I think the game is gorgeous. Like I really think like the art style holds together really well. It's cell shaded, and you definitely go to like every different region. So you have like an ice area, a fire area, and like it really shows like the colors. Like that's kind of like a play. Like they play on the colors and stuff, and it's really cool. But I mean, it definitely has its downfalls. So
Yeah, but you really can't go wrong if you're looking for a nice game with an interesting battle system. You really can't.
I mean, there's a lot of RPGs where it's like I plowed through them simply because I enjoyed the battle system. Final Fantasy X-2, I'm looking at you.
The sequel that did not need to be.
Yes. Okay, so moving on, Thomas. What is the game? What is one of the games you've chosen?
So one of the games I've chosen is actually Star Ocean: The Second Story.
All right.
So this is a game back when Enix was not part of Square.
I know,
back when they were partnered up with Tri-Ace.
I know. When I was looking it up earlier, I had forgotten that it was just Enix, not Square Enix.
Oh yeah, 2 CDs on the PlayStation 1, and oh my god, what a trip! So it's essentially a interesting pairing of sci-fi and fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Your main characters are either the magic-using Rena or the technology and sword-wielding Claude, and pretty much you're on this essentially a journey to figure out what's going wrong with the world, to fight off a big bad, and then things go a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, there's. I'm trying to figure out the best way of explaining without spoiling anything.
Oh, it's okay. You can probably spoil it. It was a game that came out, and
Yeah, and that's why I think a lot of people haven't played it now.
Yeah, that's probably true. It did come out. It came out. Okay, I'm looking.
It came out in 1998.
Yeah.
In Japan, and then we got it in 1999.
Yeah, so that was right around the time that. What else? Final Fantasy 9 and a bunch of other games were coming out. So.
Oh yeah, but it is just a fantastic RPG with one of those, we've crammed as much as we can into this game, enjoy it. You got a really wide range crafting system, you got a really interesting open area battle system, but instead of being able to run around at your leisure, you're more of inputting commands and watching the people on the field run them.
Mm-hmm.
You have in that you actually have your AI teammates can be given different orders that essentially like pre-programmed actions.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell them to hold back or to just go all out, where they start casting spells and using their abilities willy-nilly.
Mm-hmm.
Guard, heal, all sorts of stuff. And later in the series, I believe you get even more programming commands, so you can actually like tell them how you want them set up. It, like I said, it has a really just in-depth crafting system with a bunch of different levels, or different, I guess, specialties would be the best way of saying it. And then you can use those to make items, and there's super specialties that actually use the entire team to make better items. There's 2 planets to explore. There is all sorts of things to do in both the towns, the overworld, plenty of dungeons, and a whole cast of really interesting characters.
Yeah, and aren't there like a ridiculous amount of endings to this?
There is an ending for literally every character.
Yeah. Okay.
Every individual character, depending on your relationship with them, you'll get a different ending.
Yeah. And so to play this game today, as this is also a extremely rare game, I mean, you're talking like $100 used on eBay, and like $500, and it's not on PlayStation Network, which is sad.
Which is sad. It's
Yeah.
And it's honestly, it's not the only thing missing from PlayStation Network, which is a total shame.
So probably the easiest way to play this today is buying the like $17 PSP version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the PSP version doesn't change a lot.
Yeah.
It changes some names, and they change the voice acting for a lot of the characters, which kind of confuses me a little bit. Although I guess they're remastering the PlayStation version, which doesn't have the best sound quality at times. Right. But it's still a pretty solid buy.
Yeah, and I know that they did a PSP version of the original, didn't they? Yes, First Departure. And
yep,
they use in the PSP version of the first game, they use the battle system of the second game.
Yes,
because it's different. I do know that.
Yeah, the battle system in the first one was actually, I believe, I want to say side-scrolling, although that might be a later version of it.
Yeah.
Like, so when you're actually in a fight, you saw your characters on a field, and they just went left and right. They didn't actually move around a total field. Although I might be mistaken on that one. It's been a while since I played the SNES one.
Yeah.
Although that one was pretty interesting because it also had voice acting in it. It's an NES game that had voice acting.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then I know there's another game in the series, Blue Sphere, which takes place like 2 years like after this game. It's like a Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance,
something like that. Yeah. I never played Blue Sphere.
Yeah, and then I know that there's 2 more in the series.
Mm-hmm. One on the PS2 and then one on the 360,
which is like a prequel.
Well,
right?
PS3 and 360.
That one, the last
that one is the last one was technically a prequel.
Right.
I say technically because it involves none of the worlds or characters involved with the first the first two, where Star Ocean 1 and 2 are 2 is essentially a direct sequel to 1. It takes place in the future of one of the characters, and in fact Claude is actually the son of one of the main characters from 1.
Okay.
And then the fourth one, I guess, is much earlier.
Okay.
Like Earth finally leaving the planet after a nuclear war devastates it.
Yeah.
So.
And this is one of those games where when they re-released it, they decided to change the title slightly. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those like deceptive ones where it's like, oh, hey, this is a new... Oh.
It's, Star Ocean, the second story.
And Star Ocean, the second evolution.
Yeah, the second evolution. Yeah.
Which I guess kind of makes sense because then they named like the first PSP one Phantasy Star something Evolution or something like that.
Yeah, Star Ocean First Departure or something.
First Departure, yeah.
And I know that like it's see the thing is like I played this game a little bit back in the day, but like I always remembered seeing it because it has like I don't know why, but I just like always can remember that that cover art where it's just like Star Ocean over that like weird blue like purple orb thing.
Yeah.
And, like, I'd remembered seeing this everywhere. I'm like, man, like I remember seeing that game so many places. And again, it's another game where I'm now kicking myself because I was like, I could have bought that game and it's worth so much money now.
I totally did, and I still have my CDs somewhere. They're not in the best of condition because young me was a jackass when it came to handling his discs.
Oh, yeah.
But it still plays and it's still glorious.
Yeah, so probably the best way to play this game today would be going with the PSP version because I would say
the most accessible way to play this game.
Yeah. So.
And it's weird that we see Square Enix now and we're just like, oh, it's the same company. For some of us, it's probably almost always been that way.
Yeah.
But Enix was like, I mean, they made pretty good games back in the Super Nintendo days. Like,
they did. Yeah.
I think I still have Soul Blazer, which was like this super fun run around, like slice them up.
Oh, good. That game is so good. Yeah, I know. I know. It's weird because I think like the first official Square Enix game was Final Fantasy X, right?
Yeah, I think it was 10. I think 9 was actually Squaresoft still.
Yeah, I think it was because I think. Hold on, let me let me.
I do have some fond memories about Enix though, because two of my favorite games came out of that company, which was Star Ocean: The Second Story, and then also Valkyrie Profile.
Yes. Okay.
That was one
so
of
I have it
those,
here.
and that game is amazing.
Because there was one game. So, Square Enix's first game, I think, was Final Fantasy X. However, even though Final Fantasy X was a very close to being a launch title for the PlayStation 2, Squaresoft did release one game on the PlayStation 2, at least one, because I have it here in my hand, and that was the epic beat 'em up known as The Bouncer.
Oh man. Oh man, The Bouncer. I forgot that game exists. I have an empty box for that. I don't know where the disc went.
Oh no.
Yeah, I just pulled it out of my thing. That game is so weird because I'd always remember, like, man, I really want to play that because I always thought it was like an RPG or something, and I was like, oh, like Squaresoft. No, it's not. It's not a bad game, but
no, it's just not what you expect.
No.
That's pretty interesting that Squaresoft's last game on their own was that, and then when you put Final Fantasy X, once they come together, that was like a huge paradigm shift in like the style of Final Fantasy games.
Oh yeah, because their last Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah, which was still like it was super artsy and it had the open world, then they went away from that and entirely in 10.
Yeah. Well, okay, Thomas. Since the way we did the order today is we did a snake draft, just like classic fantasy football. So Thomas actually gets to go again.
Yes, I do. And my second game today is going to be one of my all-time favorites, Phantasy Star 2.
So good. And you can definitely play this game.
Oh yes, this one is the Genesis title.
Yes.
And it's one of the games I actually grew up with.
Yeah.
Essentially, it is a sci-fi title that takes place in the system system Algol, or Algo in the second one, where you're pretty much put immediately into the game to investigate why these monsters have been appearing on the surface of the current planet you're on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what ends up happening as you're going through it is you discover that things aren't quite going as they seem. One of your characters is actually a clone, and that there is more. There are other planets on the system, or other planets that are supporting life. Because between the first one and the second one, essentially space travel has gone into decline, and the reasons for that aren't completely explained. But as you're going through, you discover more secrets about what's going on in the system, what's actually happening. You fight a boss called Mother Brain, and it really had a unique art style for that point in time. It was less super deformed than, say, the Final Fantasy series had been.
Yeah,
and the battle system was fairly unique because a lot of RPGs at the time had the enemies on rows up the side.
Yeah.
So you had your enemies and your allies on either side of the screen. Well, the battle system actually had like sprites of the enemies facing you at the very far end of the screen, more like
it's like a top down.
Not a top down, no, more like looking towards the enemies. So
it's like kind of like those old dungeon crawlers.
No, I would say it's more like Earthbound. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, like Earthbound. Yeah.
I get what you're getting at, Matt. Where you just see like your characters on the bottom, and then they're spread out.
Because the first game used the same perspective like Earthbound, except where it's like a first person where you don't.
Where it's first person, kind of like the old dungeon crawlers.
You don't see. And this one, this one is like directly behind your guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Except your guys don't really appear until they attack. But it also had some of my favorite music in any video game. It's such a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
And it also has one of the most unique endings I've ever seen put to a game. Pretty much it's open-ended.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking the ending is open-ended. I'm talking the final battle is open-ended. Like, they don't really... They let you decide how things go. And it's a really interesting way of ending the game, and I always suggest anybody to go out and play it, because it is worth playing all the way through. It is a super interesting game. And the third one, it has a direct sequel, but it's not the third game in the Phantasy Star series. That's actually a completely separate game.
Yeah.
The fourth one is actually the final game in in that story.
Yeah. And the third game, the series as a whole, just 1 through 4, it's kind of like 1 is good. Like, people are like, 1's good. 2 is considered to be like, way better than 1.
Way better than 1. Oh yeah, 1 was
3 is
good,
considered 3 is considered like a step back. Like, a lot of it's
not necessarily a step back, it's a sidestep, I would say, because the whole system of that game is strange. It is a generation game, so essentially, as you're playing the story, you end up playing your own descendants through like 4 or 5 different families, and you can change who they're marrying and who has what kid, and that changes the ending of the game as well.
And then 4 is considered, 4 and 2 like are always in the toss-up as like not only what is the best game, like it's always like it's kind of like 1A and 1B. You either think 2's the best or you think 4 is the best, and that's not just for the series. That is also for like the best RPG on the Genesis. It's like Phantasy Star 2 or Phantasy Star 4, whichever one you decide is like hands down the best RPG on the Genesis.
But
I never. What other Genesis RPGs were there? That was the console I never owned.
Shining Force and Shining Force 2. Those are strategy RPGs.
Yeah, I would consider them RPGs, just really brutally hard.
There really aren't that many for the Genesis. Even if you,
there aren't.
Unless you go a step further and kind of include the Sega CD, because then you have like the Lunar games and the Ease games. And there was, I can't think of, there was
the original Lunar was on, but that was Sega CD.
Yeah, so specifically just the Genesis, like it's honestly like those 4.
There's Beyond Oasis and Landstalker.
Yeah, there are a few other, but
Shadowrun.
But but if you're thinking kind of like more traditional RPG. Like,
if you're
it's
thinking
really
like
just Phantasy
traditional
Star.
JRPG, it's literally just Phantasy Star.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting RPG titles on the game system, but they aren't Phantasy Star.
Yeah. And today, the Phantasy Star series 1 through 4 is very easy and it's very accessible to play today. Like, they're ported to just about everything. I would say probably even like iOS at this point, probably the best way to do it. I would recommend getting that like Sonic Genesis collection.
That's a good one.
For like the 360 PS3, because I think you get all 4 games
you do.
Yeah. Along with like, Streets of Rage, and I think you get Shining Force as well. So that is probably definitely the way to go.
Oh yeah, easily. And that one's you can pick up pretty cheap from just about anywhere.
Yeah. But 2 and 4, they're both great. They're both great games. I played 2 and I freaking loved it. I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic series.
Yeah. There was a remake of it, but I don't think it came out in America.
I do not remember seeing it, otherwise I would have been all over that.
It came out there was a PlayStation 2 remake of it. Yeah, that's right. And I believe it was just Japan, because I remember watching a video on this like a while ago. And
yeah, that's right. There was. It was like
in like that Sega Ages collections where they remade like Phantasy Star, Space Harrier, Outrun, like a bunch of like their classic games.
Actually, I just looked it up. Apparently, it was supposed to be ported over, but it didn't go through for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Because it looks like Sega reclaimed the publishing rights and then never actually decided to bring it over, which is really disappointing, actually.
Yeah, it really is a shame. It's kind of, it's not really a hidden gem in that, like, it clearly was, like, the only RPG on the Genesis. But in a way, it kind of is a hidden gem because
Mm-hmm.
there really weren't a lot of people playing RPGs on the Genesis. Like,
No,
so it's not necessarily a hidden gem, but
it's just maybe something that went unnoticed.
yeah. I mean, today I would consider it a hidden gem because I'm sure a lot of people, especially people who are like really into playing RPGs, probably haven't played it. You know, like a lot of like the newer generation probably hasn't played it. I mean, so like it is definitely worth going back and playing.
Oh yeah, easily.
So,
But yeah, those are my games.
okay. All right. Well, sounds like Thomas is also rolling out.
Yeah, unfortunately, I gotta go.
That's okay.
But
That's okay. Alan and I will have to pick up the slack. It's
I
We'll
hope
clean it
so.
up,
I look
don't
forward
worry.
to listening to it, though.
it's okay. All right. Well, Thomas, thanks for sharing, and we will
Thanks for having me as always.
yeah, we'll see you next
Talk
week.
to you later, buddy.
Yeah, talk to you later, guys.
All right. Okay, well, Alan and I are going to continue on, and I'm going back to my second game, which is Final Fantasy IX. So good. Alan, have you played Final Fantasy IX?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So good. So Final Fantasy IX, one of the reasons I like it, I would say that it's probably, I know I said 10, but it's kind of tough for me kind of to choose between Final Fantasy IX and Final Fantasy X. But 9 I honestly feel like it's probably my favorite Final Fantasy game. If I really had to pick. Final Fantasy IX was also one of like the first RPGs I'd ever played. I'd played 7, but I didn't finish it, and then I played through 9. I remember getting it for like my birthday. It was so great.
That's really a strange dynamic because, like, I definitely
Yeah.
played 2 first on SNES, like,
Oh,
way back.
actually, the first RPG I ever played was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for the SNES. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, what is this? Like, I just didn't understand it because I had never played a game like it. And so then I played a little bit of 7, and I was like, okay. And but 9 was like the first RPG I'd really like plowed through and beaten.
Yeah, I was learning to read playing like Final Fantasy 2 and like Soul Blazer. Like it was motivating to me in like first and second grade to learn how to read so I could play those games.
Yeah. Like Final Fantasy 9, I was just, as soon as I say it, I'm just like cherished for so many great memories. But okay, so one of the things why I think 9, in my opinion, is the best Final Fantasy game is that 9 was pretty much the last game where I can't even pronounce the guy's name. His last name is Sakaguchi, and like Nobuo Uematsu worked on as they were kind of getting ready to leave Squaresoft before Squaresoft merged Square Enix. So Final Fantasy IX is a tribute to the rest of the Final Fantasy series. So when you think about 6, 7, and 8, 6 is still more of like a fantasy setting. I mean, like they have mechs and stuff, but I mean, you know, that fantasy setting.
But it's all based around magic and like mythical creatures, yeah.
Right.
Even
And
those technologies, yeah.
Right, and then you go to 7, which is more modern, and then you go to 8, which is like really modern. So
Yeah.
9 was like a throwback, one going back to not only like a fantasy setting, but the bringing back of like the crystals, which is like a big component to almost all the Final Fantasy games. Like bringing back Moogles, who like weren't even in 7. I can't even remember if they were in 8 or not. I don't think they really were. Like Chocobos were a bigger part, and you also went back to the party system, a 4-player party system, because 7 and 8 had 3 characters as opposed to 4. And you also went back towards more traditional characters, whereas in 7 and 8, everybody can kind of be whatever they want. Like in 7, anybody can have any magic, or you like those roles don't really exist. Whereas in 9, everybody is a specific class. Like you have a mage, a knight, a thief, so on like that.
Yeah.
So you go back to that. Almost all of the music, while there's definitely original music for the game, they use a lot of themes from the other games, like in their setting. So like for example, there's a part where like the plane crashes at the very beginning, and there's this band playing music, and they're playing the Rufus Shinra like welcoming theme. Like so like they have all these throwbacks towards the rest of the series. And it works really well. The game, like it's as a tribute to the rest of the series, it is done very well. The story is kind of, the story is like I don't think the story is like super overpowering or anything. I wouldn't say it's probably the best Final Fantasy story. It's like Guy, that kind of
kind of an everyman.
Yeah, that kind of like unsung hero, like an Aladdin type character.
Yeah,
is ultimately the guy I think of, where he's like, kind of this scoundrel, and he's a thief, and then like he's ultimately like in love with the princess, and so you kind of have that going on, and then the rest of the plot towards the end, it kind of like slips away a little bit, but the game has amazing, for the time, like the full motion video, or like the videos, like the cutscenes, they're so like great and powerful, and there's a million side quests in the game. I mean, you could easily spend 80 hours in this game.
Yeah, there's a cutscene that I distinctly remember. I think it's like one of the first times you fly in the airship, and you're headed through one of the gates.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's like two other airships chasing you, trying to shoot you down, and like you just make it through the gate, and one of them like hits the gate and explodes.
One of the
awesome.
It's one of like the super black mages who's yeah. It's so cool. Like the one I always remember, the first time whenever I think of Final Fantasy IX, is when Alexandria, the main town, is under attack, and like Bahamut is the one attacking it, and then like he pulls like Bahamut, like this, the giant dragon, like is attacking the city, and like the city uses like it's like magic wings to like protect itself. Oh, it's so cool. But the game's like score is amazing. Like everything about the game is just done so well. But it even has like a great cards. Well, no, the card system is kind of confusing, but
the card game was still definitely fun, and it added it was just like another side game, like a side quest, like getting all the cards and beating like all the.
Oh yeah, and like the
masters.
Yeah, the Moogle side quest, where it's like the Moogles are like mail recipients, and you have to like go around and send all the mail so you can open up like the Moogle Central. The game has one of the most difficult side boss characters you will ever fight. Like when you have to do the Chocobo challenge, where you have to get a golden Chocobo, and then so you can fly to like heaven and fight this character Osmond, who is the ultimate like boss. He is infinitely more difficult than the final boss, and it is one of like you need your characters to be like level 80 like easily in order to even have a chance at fighting him. Now I will say one of the only downfalls I have with this game is that it is impossible to get 100% completion. Not that there is like an actual completion thing, because there's one weapon you have to get. Steiner, one of the he's like the big knight character.
Yeah.
To get his ultimate weapon, you need to reach like the 4th disc in like 13 hours, and so which is like I guess possible. You'd have to like win every battle and not do any side quests at all. But if you do it, you get his ultimate weapon, which realistically isn't that much more powerful than his second to last weapon. It's his final weapon's called like Excalibur 2. But so in order to get that, you would have to like bypass the rest of the game. So like there's side quests that are dependent upon like you like going back at specific times and things and whatnot. So like it would be impossible to get everything in the game without a cheat code. I mean, not that it's like a super big deal, but
to some people it is.
It is. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it might be possible. Like I'm sure somebody's probably done it. I definitely cannot do it. There's no way. Yeah. In this game, you can still buy like the PS1 version on like Amazon for like $15, and you can play it. You can download it.
It's on PlayStation Network.
It's on PlayStation Network for like $5. So it is without question definitely worth checking out. It's one of the best Final Fantasies in the series. Probably, I mean, one of the top 10 RPGs on the PS1. In my humble opinion, it's one of my top 10 RPGs of all time. So. It's actually one of my top 10, like one of my top 3 games of all time. So
this one had a very good art. Like as the last of that composer and Hironobu Sakuchi writer, the art style in that game, like it was really good. Like
Yeah.
you touched on, it was a throwback with all the characters sort of filling a class
Yeah.
instead of kind of just being like unique,
Right.
personality characters like 7 or 8.
Right.
Every character, like Vivi was clearly a black mage. They were
Yeah.
never like, oh,
Yeah.
you picked the black mage class. No, Vivi was just a black mage.
Yeah. And like the characters, one of the things I really like about this, and one of the things I will give the Final Fantasy series in itself, is that they really try to is like character development, and that's something I'm really big on just in stories in general. Like I can always overlook a good a plot. Like the plot can be terrible as long as there's good character development, and this game definitely has that. Like that is you can tell it's focus over plot. So for me, that's always a big plus. So and that there's several times where you will like split off and like have like just little like mini, not really missions, but little like quests or whatever with like a specific character or like a different group or whatever. And it's one of the games where it's one of the Final Fantasies where as I touched on last week about Final Fantasy 9, one of the things I really enjoyed was that in this game it's like I want to play all the characters and I can't, whereas in Final Fantasy 10 you can switch them out because like they're
Right.
all of their battle systems are so different. Like Vivi and Steiner, like if you're going to have one of them in your group, you might as well have both of them because they work together.
Right.
Right. Like, Vivi can use magic and put it on Steiner's sword, which actually makes some of Vivi's magic, because some of his magic, like Doom, would hit the entire group, including yourself, if you didn't do the magic sword version. So there's there's no reason to not have both those characters. And by doing that only opens it up for one more character.
Right, yeah, sometimes you get pushed into there's certainly less viable combinations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, Final Fantasy 9 without question worth checking out. It's so good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Last one of the day, we're going to stick with the Final Fantasy theme. And actually sort of talked on it. Like, this is a game that holds a special place in my heart because I basically learned to read playing this game. Like when I was in, kindergarten and first grade and second grade, like I had my regular Nintendo first. We didn't really I didn't have the Final Fantasy on that. I didn't really need to read to play like Demon Sword or like I can't even remember some of the other just like silly games that I had for that system. You just played. You just push the buttons and stuff happened. Like Mario, you didn't need to read. Yeah. But Final Fantasy, and specifically in this case, Final Fantasy, I call it 2, but it's 4. Right. Because Square Enix knows we can't count.
Just like well, Squaresoft, as we've been touching on today, that would not have been Square Enix.
You're right. You're correct. Let's see. But just this game went through, and it had the class system. So the first thing you're introduced to is Cecil as a Dark Knight, and just to sort of sum up the beginning, he works for the Kingdom of Baron, and their king is attempting to gain control of all the crystals. So you have this plot that's based around the crystals, and really for a while, I mean, I guess 5 did it, but no one here played that at that time. But 6 didn't have that. Right. 7 didn't have crystals. 8 didn't. 9 brought it back. So it had crystals, and in the U.S. it was the last to do that for quite a long time. Yeah. And you're trying to gather up all the crystals. Well, you start to have some conflict, and you and your friend, and probably my favorite protagonist in all the Final Fantasy series, Kain, end up leaving the kingdom. And Kain is a Dragoon, and he has the jump ability, which I thought was like so freaking cool.
Oh yeah, it is.
When I was a kid,
I still think it's super cool. I don't know why. I still just think it's the coolest ability.
And so you travel through. There's playable characters that change throughout the game. You play with 5 in your party. Yeah. So which is a ton. So all these characters have unique abilities. You end up with a ninja who has like ninja magic. You've got, at the end of the game, you have a paladin. You've got the Dragoon Kain, and you've got the summoner and black magic user, and then a white magic user. Yeah. It's an archer. Like just such a different style for each character, and you develop the relationships even with the characters that come and go. Like you get a brawler, Yang, who can do like the kick that kicks for like almost no damage all the bad guys at once. Yeah. And then Sid makes an appearance. Just an epic story on a grand scale.
Oh, it is. It really is. It probably, in my opinion, it's probably the best. Because the way I kind of look at the Final Fantasy series is like 1 through 6 is like one set of games, and then 7 through 9 is another set of games, and then it's like I break them up into I don't know why, I just subconsciously do it. And I would say I honestly want to. I know we've touched on 6, but I honestly think 4 is the best story.
The one downfall to 4's story is the villain. Like if the game ended when you stopped Golbez, like when you stopped him and he realized that, or he was under the control of Zeramus or whatever, and he wasn't the bad guy anymore. Like once you took him down, that was the villain. But then they kind of threw in another villain, and they gave you the moon, so you got to go to the moon now and like go through this ridiculously hard dungeon if you're not grinded. Yeah. And then there's a lot of side stuff in there too. So you fight basically a boss to get some of the end weapons for each character. There's a cave on the moon where you fight Bahamut and you have to beat him in like 10 turns or he nukes you. Yeah. And it's like actually called Nuke. Oh. In the original Super Nintendo version. Some of the translations were pretty funny. And then like that was the last one that did like Final Fantasy VI did it as well, but they weren't called Fire, Fyra, and Firaga. It was just Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, or Fire 4, or whatever. And Cure was the same. Life was also the same. And it wasn't Ultima, it was Meteo. Yeah. It was just like a rain of meteors.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't, like, Holy wasn't the powerful white magic spell, it was White. Yeah. So it's just like, in my opinion, what you made the distinction with 1 through 6, I would actually put 6 in the second half because it did sort of change the technology level. Like, you had an airship and you had a moon ship, the big whale. You had the big whale before, but they weren't necessarily, like, explained technology that everyone understood. There was, like, mythical stuff for the big whale. And then airships were just, like, mechanical stuff. And in 6, you got more of that like steampunk, like the Empire's technology that they built for Magic was very steampunky, and it had had sort of the same feeling that 7 had in some cases. And so I would attach that and like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9, and then 6, 7, 8, 10 would kind of be like they have 2 very different atmospheric feelings.
Right, and then 13's like obviously super like advanced. And 12
is kind of throwback that it just didn't.
Yeah. 12 in the whole Ivalice series is kind of in like it's almost in its own. I mean, it is fantasy setting. It definitely is.
But just so again, special place in my heart, learning to read so that I can understand what was going on, and then playing it with my dad. Like when we first rented Final Fantasy VI, for example, like you only had 5 days to beat it. So like he would play when he could play, and I would play, and when I could play, like during school or after school or whatever. And we would just like tell each other what happened.
Yeah. Oh,
so
really?
We still got the whole story, and then eventually like we'd rent it again and we beat it each our own. But like that was just a super strong like memory of my childhood. So both these games hold a special place. So it may not be the best, and the villain situation isn't great, but the characters and some of the unique things to it, like the five in a party, each character being very unique, which was, I mean, that wasn't really like 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3 weren't around here, and like 1, it didn't really. None of the characters really mattered themselves in that one. You just had 4 heroes of light.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't ever say anything.
Yeah, and they could be whatever. They could be whatever. And, Yeah. Yeah, and it really, for me, Final Fantasy IV, like Cecil as a main character is so great.
Yes.
You know, because he goes from Dark Knight to Paladin, and like that, like in itself is so cool. Because like
you have that transformation with a couple different characters in the game. Like Edward sort of goes through this transformation of he's a bard and he's kind of weak and he can't really fight, and like he's in your party and you have to deal with like a completely useless character.
Right.
Literally, he runs away in the fight if he gets hit. It's that sad. And like so he he kind of goes through this transformation throughout the game as well, to where he grows. And when Cecil becomes a paladin, Tella, who's an elder mage, regains his prior magic knowledge to his youth, and it actually ends up being the first actual main character death in a Final Fantasy game.
Yes.
To my knowledge, not Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, and one of the
Final Fantasy VII fanboys.
Yeah. So one of the things like I always appreciated about Final Fantasy IV, especially looking back now, is I remember like hearing so many people talk about it at school and whatnot. And it was one of those first games where this was like, before the internet, right? I mean, like the internet was around, but it wasn't like as popular as it is today, where we can just go look up all the spoilers.
Right.
But it was one of the things where people were like, you heard all the rumors. Like people were like, oh, Cecil doesn't have to turn into a paladin. And people were like, oh, there's got to be a way. Like, people were like, oh, there's a way to keep him as like a Dark Knight, like the whole game. Like I remember like that. And like I remember, and like that's something I really missed. Like the whole like where you really had to like search for Easter eggs and.
Yeah, little exploits and stuff.
Yeah, because I remember like so many people being like, oh, I bet you there, like like I remember people trying so hard to like, there's got to be a way to keep him like exploring like the whole freaking game, like just to try and keep him like as a Dark Knight.
And then there was like a lot of secret hidden stuff too.
Oh, there was, yeah.
There's at one point in the palace on the moon, basically the end dungeon.
Yeah.
There's just an invisible bridge.
Yeah.
And to get one of the final weapons, you have to notice it and walk on it. And I think my friend Thomas accidentally ran into it one time, and that's how we found it. I didn't know it was there. I'd beaten the game several times. This is actually the only game I've ever done a speed run for.
Oh, wow.
We sat down and I beat this game in one day, and it took 12 hours. My Rydia and Rosa had 1,500 hit points. It was was really hard. I basically just had to throw my most powerful weapons because they were useless to attack with. But Edge's throw still always made them do 9999.
Yeah. Wow. The first game I ever did a speedrun for, it was actually pretty awesome. It is also a Final Fantasy game. It was me and two of my buddies. It was in the summer. It was the summer after we had graduated high school. So we're all getting ready to go off to college and whatnot. And we all got together and we just bought 3 cases of Mountain Dew and the little $5 Little Caesars pizzas. And we all started Final Fantasy X, and we tried to all start it at the exact same time. And that obviously didn't happen, but we were so close, and we were playing with the sound up, so it would be Yuna, we're all hearing the volume of everyone else's game. It was so funny. But yeah, now I want to do a speed run of Final Fantasy IV. See how long
you can do it. You can do it.
See how long it would take me.
It's probably 25 hours if you get all the stuff and properly grind, but. Yeah. It's doable in 12 or maybe a little less.
Yeah. So now this game is definitely accessible in so many different variants.
And even in a remake.
Yeah. So there is the original SNES version, which a lot of people will argue is probably the best version. There was most notably probably the DS remake, where it's a 3D remake.
Yeah.
Which is good. They add cutscenes and whatnot. It's ported to just about everything. You can get it on the PlayStation 1 in those anthology collections. I think that is the one that comes with
Chronicles or something.
I have it. Hold on. Let me
because they did anthology, which you would think, oh, that's every game. Nope, it's just 5 and 6. Anthology does not include everything in Square Enix's world.
Yeah, anthology
or
is
Squaresoft's world. Sorry.
Anthology is 5 and 6, so it is Chronicles, which is 4, and Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Chronicles includes Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, because I have Origins and Anthology. So the one I'm missing is 4 and Chrono Trigger. But yeah, Final Fantasy IV, I would say it's probably the third best RPG on the SNES. That would be having 6 and Chrono Trigger ahead of it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I don't. There's other than that, 6 is clearly the best. It's so hard for me to rate these games against you. Shadowrun was such an awesome game.
Right.
Obviously not like a JRPG like we think.
Right.
the Shadowrun on Super Nintendo is like still one of the coolest games ever.
Yeah, I actually just watched a video of somebody comparing the Genesis and SNES versions, and I guess there's like a lot. It's kind of like a big divide upon which one people think is actually better. We may have to do like comparison podcast at some point where we
I played that one. I played the Sega when it was pretty recent, like within the last year, and I just couldn't get into it the same way. Like it's sort of a choose your own.
Yeah.
It has open world aspects, like you kind of pick what missions you want to do at the start, but there's really no help. Like nothing tells you what to do. So like if you read about it, it's going to tell you that the first, few hours of the game are just punishing you. You're just going to die like a lot until something clicks and maybe you get lucky and then you can kind of move on.
Right.
Whereas the Super Nintendo one is very story based, but there's also lots of like extra side stuff you can go do. And then there's just like cool guns and like you get the runners to come with you, like different runners for your style. It's got a magic system that's really accessible and just cool, like it immerses you, I feel like, with the art style better into the Shadowrun, which is like super awesome lore.
Right. Yeah. So so back to Final Fantasy IV. We go off on Shadowrun. Okay, so would you say, in your opinion, what is the version to play?
Well, I own 2 copies of the cartridge Super Nintendo version.
Whoa!
But they're not super easy to find. I mean, you can get one, and you're not paying like Suikoden 2 price, but it's probably like $40 to $60, and you got to have a working Super Nintendo, which I actually don't have.
Yeah,
I have 2 copies of the game.
Well, I mean, you could get one of those clone systems.
Oh, sure, that's true.
Yeah, like the Retron 5 or.
I was not a big fan of the PlayStation ports on those, just because they felt a little clunkier.
Right.
6, the same was true with 6 and 5. Like, I mean, I guess I'd played 5 on an emulator with it full translated, and I thought it was better like in the Super environment than the PlayStation environment.
So going with the 3DS remake.
I played it a little bit, and it just felt like it made the game take longer.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of whatever you like. It's kind of like some people like playing like the 3D, like the full 3D versions. I actually really enjoy like the sprite based graphics. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like 3D polygons and stuff, but it's like there's something about like playing a sprite-based RPG that I don't know what it is. I just like it. I really enjoy it. So for me, I personally would go with the SNES version. I think playing the SNES version, be it emulator or the actual cartridge or however you want to do it, is probably the way to go. I think this game, I'm sure it's probably on like iOS. It is. It is. And I know that there was also a Game Boy. Yeah, there was a Game Boy Advance version. Which was also like slightly different. I know it's on the PSP and the PSP version I think is more close to the PS1 version. And I believe the PSP version also has the After Years in it. It does.
Yeah.
Which we got to talk about at least for a quick second.
I've only kind of briefly looked at it. There wasn't much left unresolved, right?
Yeah.
Like to keep the spoilers to a minimum, like a couple of the characters that you meet towards the end of the game, you find out that there's like this race of moon people and they go off to sleep for a while.
Right.
And the bad guy's gone. And you go back to Earth and, characters get married and everyone lives happily ever after, but not, because the creator is this new villain for the After Years.
Right.
Have you played it?
I have not. See, for me, I kind of had a problem. I kind of had an issue with it in general, in that I was kind of in the camp that, like, the Final Fantasy games should be standalones, right? Like for the longest time, it was just like, oh, they were standalone games, right? Yeah. And then it was either X2 or Advent Children. I can't remember which one came out first. Was where they're like, okay, we're gonna start adding to the Final Fantasy games. And so for me, it even X2 I was kind of like, I just don't think this should exist, Like I just don't think this should exist. So like I'll probably play it at some point. It's pretty low on my list of games that I want to play, as I have a enormous backlog of games. So yeah, I'm sure that at some point I'll probably replay Final Fantasy IV. I'm kind of in this mode where I kind of want to replay all the Final Fantasies, just like 1 through 6, maybe not 7. Maybe I'll probably replay them all. I don't know. And so when I do replay 4, I will I'll plow through the after years.
I'm trying to figure out what was the first, because the film was Advent Children, and then there was Dirge of Cerberus, and
there was the Final Fantasy movie,
Crisis Core,
which was just Final Fantasy the movie, which
that was called Advent Children.
No, Advent Children is the movie about Final Fantasy VII. There was there was
what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
7 was the sequel game.
Yeah. There was a just standalone Final Fantasy movie.
Oh right, no, that's terrible.
It was terrible. Yeah, it was terrible. Okay, so Final Fantasy VII. There is.
It's Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus.
Well, Final Fantasy VII. There's quite a bit of stuff. There's like a mobile game or something, which I think takes place even before Crisis Core, which was like only in Japan and like not even on smartphones. It was on like phones before, like it was on like yeah. So it like almost doesn't even count. So then there's Crisis Core. Then there's like a Japanese OAV, which is like takes place which you can just watch. That's like 26 minutes. And it's like kind of the events of like the end of Crisis Core leading into Final Fantasy VII. Then it's Final Fantasy VII. Then it's Advent Children, which is 2 years after Final Fantasy VII. Then it's Dirge of Cerberus, which I think is like 2 years after Advent Children. Then technically there is the hidden ending in Final Fantasy VII, which isn't really a hidden ending. It's just like after the credits, where it's like 200 years after, and it's just like Red 13 looking over Midgar. So it's kind of like there's like a lot in the Final Fantasy VII timeline. I looked it all up.
So I wanted to know which one actually was like physically made first, and 10-2 was the first.
10-2 was
the first sequel. Like it was a couple years later when Dirge of Cerberus came out, and Crisis Core was a year after that. So screw 10-2.
So 10-2 is the one that ruined Final Fantasy.
Ugh, man, and now we've got 3 13s.
Oh, I still haven't even finished Final Fantasy 13. I'm like I'm towards the end, but I just can't do it.
Oh man. All right, more tangents.
Yeah. So
play Final Fantasy IV if you haven't played Final Fantasy IV yet.
Yeah. Play Final Fantasy IV. It is you cannot go wrong. I mean, honestly, for me, it's kind of like if you look through one through, even 1 through 13, excluding, 11,
Spin-offs.
11, right?
And 11.
So the 12 actual Final Fantasy games. I mean, there's like the ones that I think that are like really worth, like, if we were to rank them, like 4 is definitely towards the top.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, 6 is probably the best. 4 is definitely, 4 is definitely one of the better ones. It is definitely one of the better Final Fantasies to play.
Back when we thought there might be a chance that it was actually the Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're sure there's not 100 more.
Yeah, now there's like 100 Final Fantasy games. So, yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, that is our show. I am Matt Brady, and Thomas would be here, but I guess he left. So I don't know where he is.
We tossed him. He's out of here.
And I don't think he's made a Twitter yet. So I guess you can follow me at Super Gains Bros on Twitter. You can follow Alan at his personal Facebook, which is still so.
I realized I didn't spell it, so I better spell it because you'll never guess it if I don't. It's ALLYN.Thomas spelled normally .92 on Facebook. So
yes,
look me up, check me out. Send in an email if you have a question. We've got a Box Trek email, right?
We do have a Box Trek email. You can also leave comments in the YouTube videos. and you can ask us questions, and we will definitely answer them. If you ask a question,
probably really fast too.
Yeah. If you ask a question, we will definitely answer. I think our next video is we've got our next podcast. I haven't really decided yet what we're gonna do. It's probably gonna be our top 10 video game consoles of all time.
Yeah, I just got your list today, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I don't know, 10 consoles is a lot of consoles.
It is. So anyway, that is our show, and as always, thanks for listening.